Hey guys, Jaryd Krause, host of the Buying Online Businesses podcast. And in this episode, I'm lucky enough to speak with Sam McRoberts from VUDU Marketing. And Sam is the author of Screw the Zoo. And he's been featured and published in Forbes, Entrepreneur, Inc.com, Moz.com, Quicksprout.com, Amex, all of these amazing brands because he is such a gun at what he does in the SEO space. And the list just continues to go on. In this episode, we talk about how Sam actually got started in SEO and digital marketing when he was still at school back in 1999 and worked his way up to where he is at today, working with some of the biggest brands. And we talk about the future of SEO and where it's heading. So if you're looking to buy a website business and grow it with really good evergreen SEO strategies that are going to last a long time, be sure to not miss out on this episode. We talk about how to set the foundation, how to really get your website ready for growth, how to get traffic, and how to do conversions to ensure that you end up having a business that makes money in an evergreen way and will continue to do so. So there's so much value in this episode. Go away and enjoy it. Now, guys, before we start today's episode, I have an important and exciting announcement for you. I'm hosting the first ever Buying and Building Online Businesses Summit, and I'd love for you to join. We have 12 world-class speakers doing 7, 8, and 9 figures in business. We have some of the world's best website brokers, SEOs, and digital marketers. Now, guys, this summit is a free event, and we're going live on the 1st of February, 2020, and it's a 4-day event. And each day we're going to have 3 speakers. And this summit has been designed to equip you with the best principles, strategies, and tactics to buy websites whilst minimizing your risk and to also grow those businesses so you can become wildly successful with those websites you do buy. And the reason this summit's really important is because what was working in 2019 won't be working in 2020 and beyond. Because what happened in the past, and you can see in the online space, things change very quickly. So whether you're a first-time buyer wanting to buy your first ever website or you have multiple websites you want to grow, you're going to be able to get access to the best mentors in the industry who are going to be able to feed you little gold nuggets throughout this whole event. These are going to be strategies you'll be able to use in 2020 and well beyond to ensure you can achieve your lifestyle goals and your financial goals. So guys, go to the show notes right now and grab yourself a ticket to the Buying and Building Online Businesses Summit. There'll be a link there so you can get access and register for the summit. And now let's get started with today's episode. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Buying Online Business podcast. And today I get to speak to Sam. Okay, now Sam is a gun in SEO. When I went away and did some research on you, Sam, I was amazed at how many great people you've worked with. So thank you so much for your time and thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Awesome. So you've worked with some pretty big names, Amazon Music, Microsoft, Neil Patel, Pat Flynn, and guys, for the listeners that are listening, the list is endless. But Sam, you got started back in marketing online in 1999. When the internet was just starting out, man. How did you get into this space at that time?
So it was twofold. I had an English teacher who realized that I couldn't care less about reading Moby Dick or Wuthering Heights, and who was perfectly fine to let me do something different. And so she challenged me to learn how to build websites, pick a topic I was interested in, build a website, and write as much as I could on the site about the topic from different angles. So I was like, cool, I can do that. About the same time, my mom started up an eBay business, buying stuff from garage sales and flipping it on eBay for cash. And I was helping her find stuff to sell, write descriptions, understanding the fledgling online marketing, online sales world. And so this 2-pronged approach got me into it. I was like, wow, this is something that anybody can learn how to do. It's really not that hard, but not many people understand it yet. And just took it from there. Built a few websites for myself and friends. And then a few years down the road, started working for an agency, building small websites, doing paid search, affiliate stuff, a little bit of SEO. And then, on from there, I've been doing almost primarily SEO for the last, let's say, 12 or 13 years. And over the last 8 or so, focused on audits and strategies.
Wow, that's so cool that you had a teacher like those two, like two sort of things aligned so perfectly well for you. If
Yes.
you were made to be an entrepreneur, right? Like as a kid, and having a teacher support you in that way and realize like, hey, he doesn't want to go read books, which was me. My mum tried to pay me to read books. She tried to pay me 5 cents a page. She bought me the Harry Potter book, and she said, Jaryd, if you read this, I'll pay you 5 cents a page. I got halfway through the first chapter, I shut the book and I said, Mum, you can keep your money. So I'm very similar to you, Sam, in the sense that I did not like school at all. But to have a teacher that supports you in learning about something you're interested in, that's so powerful, especially back in 1999.
Yeah. I mean, it was huge for me. Like I liked learning. I just hated the structured, rigid method that they use in schools. And I get it. Like you have to do things a certain way when you're dealing with mass numbers of kids. Like one teacher can only do so much personalization when they have 30 or 40 kids in their class. So I understand.
Yeah,
But for me, it was just so frustrating. And having a teacher who like got that and was willing to work with me my way was fantastic.
that's so amazing. And then also to have your mum be on eBay and starting to sell things, and then you just testing things out when you're still at school. Man, like I think most people listening to this would kill to have that sort of opportunity when they're at school. It's really awesome, man.
It was great. And I wish school could be more like that. I always had kind of an entrepreneurial bent. I was never very good at following rules. I was always trying to come up with some little side thing to make money, whether it was the newspaper route or a garage sale or mowing lawns. But yeah, it was nice. It was really cool to have both a mom and a teacher who saw that and supported it. And yeah, I learned a lot from both.
Yeah, that's really cool. I remember taking me back to when I was a kid still at school, is we were washing cars. So we had a mission, myself, my brother, and our two mates that lived like just across we had a little river type thing, canal, just across that. We had a goal that we wanted to buy a boat together. So we just started washing everybody's cars so we could buy a boat.
That's
And so we
awesome.
could go fishing off the boat when we were super young. But now that I'm seeing like how things do evolve. Like I've got some friends who are teachers that work at a school where it's learning and to lent towards what people and the children are mostly interested in. So that is starting to take place now around the world, but back in 99 it's very different. So from there you moved into SEO, right? And what helped you transition from digital marketing? Because digital marketing is kind of linked with SEO to a certain extent, but it can also be very different too. So, what sort
For
of
sure.
made that bridge?
I got introduced to it. So I had learned a little bit about search engines and SEO in those early days, but it really wasn't a big thing. There were a handful of forums and IRC channels that discussed it, but it wasn't big. It was probably the mid 2000s that SEO really started becoming a known thing. And for me, it was puzzles. I'm obsessed with solving puzzles, and not necessarily, the wooden or metal kind, but like anything that is a conundrum, and you have to pick and poke and learn and try things to figure out what works. And so SEO is in some ways the ultimate puzzle. You have Google, that's largely a black box, and you have these websites that are all different and complicated and different resources available. And so you figure out, all right, well, what is it that Google's trying to do? What are some of the signals that they could be looking at? And on the flip side, what is this website trying to accomplish, and what resources do they have available to do it? And figuring out how to line everything up to get it to work just so. And so for me, it's like playing a game of chess against Google. And I need to figure out what moves are they likely to make? What moves have they already made? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? And then how do I help clients to figure all that out and take advantage of it?
Yeah, awesome. It is such a puzzle. And it's the cool thing about it. If you love puzzles and everybody else because all the people that are listening are wanting to buy, all my clients and listeners are wanting to buy businesses and then grow them and either flip them or keep them. So for those of us who are listening, especially you too, Sam, like that's a continual, ever changing puzzle that Google is just updating every 3 months. So you must find it fun at times too, yeah?
Very much so. Yeah. I mean, Google is constantly tinkering. They don't really put out numbers very often, but last I heard they were running something like 1,000+ tests a year. And out of those, they consider maybe 500 of them as potential signals to add into the algorithm. And the number of changes and tests they run is insane. And so it's constantly changing, but it's always moving in the same direction, generally. And that is make sure that whoever comes to Google and does a search finds what they want as fast as possible, and are satisfied with what they find. And so, from that perspective, it's really about getting into your customer's head and understanding their pain points, what it is they're trying to solve. Because, somebody may search something that seems very ambiguous, like car parts, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you have to figure out, all right, well, how do I start there and figure out where they're going and provide them with the right content for that intent? Like, it's not specific enough. And so there's a lot of things that you can do on that front that help.
Yeah. So for everybody listening, Google really wants to help diagnose somebody's problem or issue in the shortest possible time, but with also the best amount of value, right? Is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're using machine learning and statistics to figure it out. So they have such a huge set of data. All right, we know that 10,000 people searched for this, and out of all of those, 57% went to a site that covered the topic from this angle. So the
Mm.
top 3 spots, we're going to include that angle, since statistically that's the most likely type of answer to satisfy this query. And that's what they do. And they just go down that stack. All right, the next biggest chunk likes this type of answer, so we'll mix in a couple of those, and so on. And so you can get a really good idea for how that breaks down just by looking at a search result page. Like, what is Google ranking for this keyword, and what are the differences in those content that's showing up?
Yeah. And that's a really good thing that maybe I want to ask now is like, there's so many things you can look at, as you said, just by doing a quick Google search, but there's also so many amazing tools out there. Now, are you a fan of Ahrefs, or what sort of tools do you use yourself? And then do you have any recommended tools for people that are listening? That I know there's free tools, but like Neil Patel's free tool. But yeah, what sort of tools are you guys moving towards and using mostly?
So my favorite at present, I have 2 favorites. One is SEMrush. And I mean, out of all of the tools that do keyword research and link indices, I feel like SEMrush is spending the most money to innovate and add really good tools to the stack. And then the other that I use the most is Screaming Frog, which is a crawling tool that runs through a site the same way Google does, link to link, pulls out all of the data, technical, SEO centric, and helps you to easily export and organize that and understand what's going on a site technically. So those 2 things make up the backbone of what I use, but there are tons more. Um, there are other link index tools like Moz, Ahrefs, Majestic, keyword research tools, Ubersuggest, or Answer the Public. And then there's all kinds of browser plugins that let you do interesting things.
Yeah.
Tons of tools.
There are so many tools. I've got quite a few different tools myself, and yeah, those plugins and browser tools as well are really cool. I used to have the Moz. Now, quite familiar with SEMrush, but what was the was it Screen Prog? Because I'll do for everybody. I'll link these in the show notes. Was it Screen or Scream with an M?
Screaming,
Oh yeah.
Screaming Frog.
Oh, for Screaming Frog. Awesome. Cool. I'll link that in for everybody. So I wanted to ask, you get like you work with people that have quite big budgets, bigger than most people that are starting out when they're just starting out as entrepreneurs or starting a site. People with putting 10K a month to up to 200K a month or more into some SEO work. When you do an audit for somebody, or say somebody's going to buy a website, what sort of some of the first things you look at in an audit? Say it's a
Yeah.
content site with affiliate and AdSense. What sort of things would you sort of look at for those?
So really, my goal with an audit is to try and extract. I'm looking to understand how optimized the site is at present. What resources are available to work with? How much content do they have? How regularly are they adding content? Is it long enough? Is it well written? Are you linking to things well internally. Is the site fast? Is it easy to use on mobile devices? Are you using the right keywords in the right places? Are you consistent? And I'd say a lot of it boils down to that. Like, is the site user friendly? So easy to navigate, well connected together and fast. Is the content really good? You represent the best in class for your industry in terms of content quality and length and variety. And you know what keywords people are searching for, and you've threaded those through consistently. I'd say those are probably the three biggest things. And if you nail all of those, if you have amazing content, the site is fast and easy to use, and you've been thoughtful about where you integrate those keywords, you've already done probably 80 to 90% of what needs to happen. And then the rest is icing on the cake and boosting it, at least from the things that you control. Largely out of your control, of course, are the links coming into your site. And you can do stuff to build links, but it's much more complicated.
Yeah. So it's kind of like the saying, grant me the serenity to accept the things I can change. The wisdom, what is it? Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And yeah, so you can change your on-page SEO quite quickly, and then your off-page SEO is more so like link building and outreach for those that are listening. So when it comes to on-page SEO, and this is exactly what you've just said now, is I had a client buy a site, I think it was a week ago, and we had a chat this week about a growth strategy for him, and it's a content site. And the main thing was to get like a lead magnet put in place, redesign the site to make it look good, because the aesthetics of it weren't very user-friendly, wasn't very good. And then also refine the content, because Google loves to have updated, they love sites getting updated and renewed and refreshed and made better and better all the time. This is what I've seen, they start to favor that and then start adding some really good content with keywords that people are searching. So would you say that's a good sort of place for people to start once they've bought a site like this? And how would you build on top of what I just mentioned there?
Definitely. Yeah. And I mean, I like to use a construction analogy. So you wouldn't go pouring money into a bathroom remodel if your foundation and your plumbing was trashed. And you start with the stuff that's most critical, and then you build on top of a solid foundation. So the things that are in your control, the content, the keywords you use, the technical, capabilities of your site, speed, mobile friendliness, like that's the stuff that's in your control. It's not terribly complicated to fix for the most part. And everything else you do after that will multiply the value. So, a link going to a site that's poorly optimized may add little to no value. A link going to a site that's very well optimized adds much more value.
Yeah, it makes sense, because you want to, I think that analogy of getting the foundation right is really the best, because it's not just also if you have a site where you don't have any sort of lead magnet or way that you can grab subscribers or add value to them. If you went away and put all this money into the traffic, like, you're going to get traffic to the site, but it's not going to give you an ROI. Yeah.
Totally. You see the same thing in like conversion rate optimization. You don't start pumping traffic into a funnel until you've plugged the holes in your funnel and tightened things up. Otherwise, you're just wasting money. SEO is no different.
Yeah, exactly. So if you were going to redesign a site, what would be some of the things that you'd look to do? Like, would it be mainly the theme, to have a look at the theme and to make sure it's not just fast, but looks good and is user-friendly? What other things would you kind of look for?
I would definitely start there. I think aesthetics are big, especially if you're trying to get somebody to share their information with you or make a purchase. Like, your site needs to look reputable. It needs to be really easy to navigate. I mean, the vast majority of web users now, especially in developing countries, are on mobile. And so it needs to be You need to be able to easily tap the buttons and navigate through the site. The text needs to be large enough to easily read on a phone. It needs to be fast. Not all people have really good internet connections. All over Europe, like there's pretty slow mobile speeds in some places, and that's still first world, right? So
Yeah.
you need to account for potentially slow mobile speeds. Don't make your site too heavy or too image rich. Try and keep it lightweight. I would say, that's definitely the best place to start. But then really just think about the people you're trying to attract. Like, how can I solve their problems? If you always do that, if you try and be empathetic and put yourself in the role of problem solver for the people who might visit you, I feel like that will take you a very long way, because then you're like, all right, well, this person has this challenge. What are the different ways to think of that? What are the questions that they might ask? What are the steps to solving that problem? What does their journey look like? And then how can I build out content that walks them through that whole journey end to end? I'd say over the last couple of years, the content that I've seen Google favoring most is content that covers a relatively narrow topic, but in great depth. So, somebody wants to learn about this. What are the pieces of that? What are the different questions they might ask around this topic? And then build out a really long, in-depth piece of content that hits that topic from multiple angles. So instead of that person having to do half a dozen searches on Google and visit different sites to get each of these answers, Google can send them to one place that answers all the questions they know they're going to ask. That's gold.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I love that you said that, because that's a big thing that I like to tell all of my clients is that the person in, not that this is a competition, but say it was, but the person in life and the person in business that adds the most value wins, right?
Totally. And that's literally what business is. It's adding value to somebody. And you have a few different options, right? You can add a very small amount of value to a lot of people, or you can add an enormous amount of value to a few people. And then you have the entire spectrum in between, but it's always value transfer. Money represents the time that you've spent to acquire it. And so somebody is giving you a small piece of their life every time they're buying something. Make sure you're giving them more than that in value.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's awesome. Thank you. And with a redesign that's, you've done the aesthetics, and you've added a lot of value. You've made sure you've wrapped some really good content around those keywords that are ranking. What would be the next sort of steps from there?
So after you feel like you have a solid foundation in place, content's good, site's easy to use, I would start trying to promote the content that you create. So, using social advertising to boost and seed content is really effective. You have such good targeting options,
Yeah.
especially if you already have an email list. If you can do a lookalike audience for your email list or retarget your website visitors, like you can be very effective at promoting content that you put out and getting it in front of people who are the most likely to share it, blog about it, link to it. Is probably the lowest hanging fruit in terms of link building and exposure. So you could spend, $20, $25 promoting something on Facebook when you launch it, or even Reddit ads. StumbleUpon ads can actually still be effective, even though StumbleUpon is, an older site. But there's lots of things that you can do to promote it. But starting to get it in front of people and acquire links would be the next most important step after your foundation is solid.
Wow, stumble upon. I used to be a travel blogger back in the day, and when I first tried to start making money online, and I used Stumble Upon to try and get my content out there, but I didn't realize it was still around, which is quite cool. And I think I have a bit of a suggestion for people that are moving from, the on-page SEO to you've got that foundation sort of built to getting more traffic to it, because that's moving into digital, more sort of digital marketing, where if you guys buy a site and you haven't got like tracking set up, like a Facebook pixel and a Google tag pixel and all these other things, you can create an audience that you can target without having to capture email. Although I'm not saying you shouldn't capture email, as that's probably the most valuable way you can target somebody. But definitely have your pixels set up, because then you can use them in Facebook and YouTube and Google, and start promoting from there, especially with now it's been around for a long time now, but the boost post on Facebook, you only need to put, like you said, Sam, $20 behind it, and you can start getting more traffic to the foundational hub of the site that you've started to grow and build. And then from there, I guess you would be talking about more sort of conversions. Is that right?
Exactly. Every site is built to fulfill a purpose, whether it's page views for ad revenue, or you're selling something, or maybe you're just building a list that you can sell things to down the road. But like your site has a goal, or you wouldn't have the site. And anything you do should be in service to that goal.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's when you move into the more sort of conversion rate optimization. Now, Sam, when you work with clients and you're consulting, and I don't know whether you have your team do quite a lot of work, would you do the whole package, or you're mainly just SEO?
So I only do primarily SEO audits and strategies. So I don't do fulfillment work. I
Cool.
do some ad hoc consulting, but I work mostly with people who have a team internally who can take recommendations and execute on them. But if you're a smaller business, you've got to become the Swiss Army knife, the jack of all trades. And so I feel like if you're going to do it yourself, you need to have at least a basic understanding of SEO, paid search marketing, paid social, conversion rate optimization, copywriting. I think with that set of things, you'd probably be pretty solid. But yeah, so for a lot of the clients that I work with, they know they need help on the SEO front. They usually don't have anybody internally who's an expert on it, but they do have resources available to implement. And so they'll pull me in to do an audit. So tear the site apart top to bottom, tell us everything that's right and wrong, and give us a prioritized list of things to fix. Or we think we already have the site pretty well buttoned down, but we're not sure what we should be doing for the next 12 months or 2 years or 3 years. So help us put together a strategy that walks us through, like, here's the set of tactics you need to do and why and in what order, so that we'll get the outcome that we need with the budget that we have.
Yeah, great. And so with a strategy, that was mainly a year strategy, because guys that are listening, SEO is not like, especially if you're doing on-page SEO, even outreach to getting links, it takes time, especially for Google to notice that you've made changes. Like, they've got gazillions of web pages to crawl, and yes, they're using machines, but they've still got to make sure, they've got all these other tasks of how do I make sure our users get value on the search engine. So is it normally a year sort of strategy you'd work with initially and then build on top of that, or do you have 3 month strategies? How does that normally work for you guys?
It usually depends on what the client wants. In some cases, they say, hey, we're building out a roadmap for the next 3 to 6 months, so give us something for that. Others, it's like, hey, we want to use this strategy for the next year or 2 or 3, and we need to have something that's more long range in thinking. So try to tailor it to what the client needs. But I would say generally, I wouldn't plan a strategy out for longer than about 3 to 6 months before revisiting it and making sure things are working, moving in the right direction, uh, rechecking to see that you're allocating resources efficiently. If Google has made a big change and that throws a wrench in things, you might need to change course. But 3 to 6 months is usually a good horizon before you pause and reflect.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that, because if you did over a year up into the 2 3 year range, then you do not only have Google algorithm changes, but you could be building a strategy where you might have to shift focus in 3 to 6 months, because you may have tested something out that didn't get the result that you needed. So it may be worth focusing on something better, and you could
Yeah.
end up getting a better result. Anybody that owns a business has tried and tested things that haven't worked, and then you had to change your focus, right?
Totally. Yeah. And a lot of the longer term strategies include pieces like, look, task a developer to monitor these things on this basis. Make sure you're reporting and measuring on this set of metrics so that you can see if things are working or not. Pay attention to these problems that occur on long time horizons, like seasonality or fluctuations in search trends, using something like Google Trends to monitor over time if more or less people are searching for a specific phrase. There's a lot of things you need to pay attention to when you're looking further out. But having a strategy that points you in the right direction long term, like, we know long term that this is the type of content that we're going to create. And this appears to be the ideal schedule for us. And these are the types of channels where our audience spends the most time. And so we're going to focus long range there unless things change. And so, keep moving in that direction until you see a signal that tells you should do otherwise.
Yeah. And so, Sam, you've been in the SEO space for quite a while, and you know quite a lot about digital marketing. I dare say that you've seen a lot of changes happen in the SEO space. Is it getting to a point where you can sort of start to see the gist of where it's all heading? So I wanted to ask, like, what do you see happening for the next, in 2020? Like, do you see some things changing and how people are searching and how things will be brought up in front of them once for the results that they search for? Is there stuff that you feel that like site owners should be looking out for as well?
There are definitely some. I mean, Google continuously is moving in the same direction, right? Like, make sure that we're satisfying searcher intent as well as possible. One of the trends that is not ideal for people who rely on organic traffic is Google trying to keep people on their search engine and give them answers directly instead of sending them to somebody's site.
Yeah.
So what the industry is calling zero-click search results. And those are growing. Zero-click search results now, I believe, are more than half of all searches.
Oh,
Somebody's looking
wow.
for a very small piece of information. They don't need a post. They don't want to see ads. They're looking to know, like, when is the next date for Thanksgiving, or what is the schedule for this sporting event? Very small, simple things with data that's in the public domain, and Google can easily just provide those answers. So that's happening a lot more. I think any business that's built on answering simple questions with very short content is screwed long term,
Wow.
and is probably already feeling the pinch now. So I would make sure that whatever industry you're in, it's one where you're selling a product that's not a commodity, or you're working to answer questions that are complex. They require real expertise and depth to your answers that Google can't serve in a knowledge box. Businesses, you know, more and more as people rise up the income ladder, they're looking for more and more services and higher quality products. So I think those spaces are going to continue to grow. But yeah, like the early days of the internet, anybody could throw up a site, add a little bit of information, thin information on a bunch of stuff and do well. That's
Yeah.
definitely going away.
Yeah.
What else is changing? Trend wise, I think more and more, the mobile experience is getting bigger and bigger, whether it's speed or usability, just because more people are switching to mobile devices as their primary search device. I think down the road, I don't think it'll be in the next year or two, but I definitely think down the road, a lot more searches are going to end up being voice searches. And depending on where technology moves to, if we really do end up with augmented reality glasses, as companies like Apple and Facebook are pushing towards, then the nature of how we interact with search results and do searches could change radically. Uh, right now you may search like, what's the price of this jacket, or where could I buy this article of clothing, or something that would require you to go somewhere to make a purchase. But it could be in the future you're walking through a store with augmented reality, point at something and snap your fingers, and it's just purchased automatically through your headset, right? So I think things will change dramatically in the next 5 to 10 years. But I'd say for the next couple of years, if you just focus on providing a good mobile user experience and top-notch content and then promoting your content, you should be okay.
Yeah. That's amazing to see. Like virtual stores roll out will be quite cool. But I dare say
Yeah.
for e-commerce site owners to not stress too hard on that, because I dare say a lot of that platform will be built by one of the big names, such as maybe Google. And
Yeah.
I'm sure they would make it accessible to a lot of stores that are trading under the 500K range, because otherwise, I don't feel that somebody's going to buy a VR headset to go shopping in their home in 5, 10 years' time if they can only shop at Amazon or only
Yeah.
shop at Walmart. Um, but that's really cool. Like, I really love seeing where this is heading. I was thinking quite small. Like in the next sort of 2 years, I'm looking forward to people asking a question to Google and my voice popping up and a snippet of my podcast just gets shouted out to them. And I think that'd be really, really cool. One thing that I have noticed that you've said is the simple, easy questions. I noticed when I was traveling with my partner, we would get to the day that our flight was and be like, oh, we had a gist of what the time was that our flight was. But what I did is I just went onto Google on my phone and I just typed in, Dubrovnik to Rome flight. And what came up was my flight details. It was scheduled at the right time. It was on time. Everything was there. And it already, yeah, I wasn't even like, I must have been logged into Google, but I thought it was really,
Yeah,
really cool. And it's just making it so much easier for us, isn't it?
it is. And that's their goal, right? Like remove friction from the process. And that's kind of the trend, not just in search, but even in technology.
Yeah.
Every new interface, new apps and technology, it's all about removing friction. And that's kind of the lens I use to figure out where things are going. Like what is the next step that X, Y, or Z could take that would get rid of some friction, and then expect that that will come down the road and prepare for it.
Yeah. I see and this is just my perception, but I see that SEO has been an industry that has just come out of nowhere. Since you've been around doing this sort of stuff, right? And a little bit before my time in the online space, but I can't see it going anywhere in a sense that we're still going to need a way that we can search for things, whether we're doing it with our VR headsets or with our voice or, however we do it, there's still going to be a place for being a place for having a way that we can optimize how we search for things in a shorter time frame and much easier,
Totally.
right? Like I can't see it going anywhere.
No, I think it'll be around for a long time. And I mean, really, in some ways, the role of an SEO is kind of like a translator between a website owner and Google. You're
Yeah.
there to make sure that the communication goes smoothly, and that, Google has one set of things they're looking for, and their own internal language, and a website owner might have something different. You're just there to make sure that they can each communicate with each other in the right way. I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. People will keep searching. People who create stuff that needs to be searched for are going to need to understand how to make it searchable.
Yeah. We just need Google to be a little bit more transparent with us at times.
As great as that would be, like, I get they have to walk such a fine line.
They do.
If they give too much information, it becomes easy to manipulate the algorithm. And if they give too little information, then it becomes difficult to optimize for it. And so they have a very, very challenging job
Yeah.
providing enough information to help people make things better, and not so much that it ends up screwing up the quality of their search results with spam.
Yeah, we definitely don't want manipulation because that's where it starts to become quite unfair, right? It's just not the best way to go. And then it wouldn't help them if there was certain businesses or people that didn't use those levels of manipulation, because it would devalue how people would find things on the search engine as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, at the end of the day, right, Google wants to provide you with the best answer, not the answer from the site that's the craftiest and most manipulative.
Yeah.
And so when you're like, a lot of the sites that like to cut corners and play tricks and do things to try and cheat at the game of Google, they're short-term thinkers. And so they're not putting effort into quality, they're just putting effort into speed. And that's not what you want in the search results. So in another way, the role of an SEO who's focused on doing things above board is like a shepherd for the internet, somebody who's trying to
Yeah.
help keep the ocean clean and keep the crap out of the waters. So
Yeah.
multifaceted.
Perfect name I think might be for it is Evergreen, and that's what we want in our business. Is we want an evergreen business model. We want to do our SEO in an evergreen way, and you can call
Yeah.
it white hat against black hat. Depends what you want, but I feel that, like you say, and maybe an overall theme that we're talking about in this episode is all to be evergreen. The way Google is heading is evergreen, and that's what we need to do in not just our business but also our life. Right? It's really important.
Yeah, I like to use Warren Buffett as an example. He's all about long-term value investing, sound fundamental principles, and the approach to SEO should be the same. Like if you're in this for the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, it's too short. It's not enough of a time horizon. But if you're trying to build a business that's going to last for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, then you do things differently in both short and long term. And you think about your problems differently, and you're willing to lay out capital up front to create a solid foundation that will pay dividends long term. That's a much better approach.
I like this. I like a lot of what Warren Buffett does, and that's what a lot of myself and my clients do is head down the direction he does. Like he's the most successful business buyer, and that's what we're doing is we're buying business. And I also like to explain to my clients is that you want an evergreen approach to buying a website, and some people do want to cut corners, and they want people like, hey, can somebody else just do the due diligence for me? And you can have that happen, but what I feel is like it's really good for you to have not full ownership, but really control over the process and also really understand it. Because what happens if you buy a business is like it doesn't end up being exactly what you want because you didn't understand it and you didn't do the due diligence, or there were some red flags that you didn't see. You've just outsourced all responsibility, and that's not an evergreen approach, which is why
Exactly.
I give people these free tools like learn how to do your due diligence really well. I give them free frameworks, website evaluator tools, so you can learn how to do this for free, and then build on that, like what we talked about, that foundation. It's really important, I feel.
Yeah, and I mean, like if you're buying websites that already have a track record and a foundation, and you're planning to take that over and run it, you really need to understand SEO. Because if you don't, I mean, there's a lot of really manipulative stuff that somebody could have done to get it to that point, just long enough to sell it to you, and then the rug gets pulled out. It could have a terrible link profile that's going to end up getting you penalized, or maybe they've built links to it through another layer, and as soon as they've sold the site, they remove that secondary layer and all the links go away. You need to have a pretty solid understanding, especially of the link side of things, if you're going to be buying websites.
Certainly. And that's why I share a lot of tools with my clients. And so, guys, if we're talking about an evergreen approach here in both buying sites and checking out SEO, so make sure you do your due diligence correctly. Like go to my site and get the free resources, buyingonlinebusiness.com/free resources, and just grab that stuff. And I I just want to say thank you so much for jumping on, Sam. I really enjoyed having a chat, and I guess we could either keep going or do this again, which I suggest we do. But where can people find out more about you, what you do, and how you can help people who may be interested?
Yeah, so all the work I do is through VUDU Marketing, VUDU. Google that, I should be the first result. And then I spend a lot of my time on Twitter. So Sam's_antics on Twitter. I don't talk about digital marketing as much on Twitter. It's more all the other things that interest me, like, future technology and existential reality type questions, philosophy, that sort of thing.
I love it.
Those are the two easiest places to find me.
Cool. Well, we'll link to those in the show notes. Everybody that is listening, thank you for listening. If you did like this episode, please be sure to subscribe and share. And I would love to ask you for a review. If you like this, please leave a review and let me know what about this episode and the podcast you actually like, so I can bring more awesome guests to the show, just like Sam. Thanks again, Sam, and thank you everybody for listening.
Thanks for having me.